God's chosen ones. Never share these 5 sacred secrets. They'll use them against you. You thought sharing made you strong. You thought telling the truth early made you real. But the truth is, some things are sacred. Too sacred to survive the weight of wrong ears. Too divine to be displayed before they're done growing. Samson revealed his secret and lost his strength. Joseph shared his dream and was thrown in a pit. Even Jesus said, "My time has not yet come." That God still meant to be kept? Because when you are God's chosen, your greatest power isn't always in what you say. It's in what you protect. If you are God's chosen one, this message was written in heaven with your name on it. The sacred secrets, 5 things the chosen must never reveal. I used to share everything. Every vision God gave me, every battle I was facing, every secret scar I mistook for a testimony. I thought it made me authentic, maybe even anointed. But what I didn't realize was that some truths are too sacred to be spoken before they're ready. And I learnt it the hard way, not through storms, but through silence. Not from enemies, but from those I trusted. Because when you speak what heaven's still shaping, you give the enemy the blueprint. The calling didn't leave me, but it hid itself until I learnt how to carry it with wisdom. This is not a story of fear. This is a story of protection, of guarding what is still growing, of walking like Nehemiah, building with one hand, shielding with the other. So to every chosen one who's ever spoken too soon, who's ever been betrayed for being transparent, who wonders if silence is surrender, this is your reminder. You weren't called to perform the promise. You were called to steward it. Part 1. The wound is where the oil flows, but not everyone deserves to see it. The afternoon sun slanted through the blinds of the old church office, painting lines of gold across Elise's face. She sat in a velvet chair too big for the room, her hands clutching a weathered journal filled with ink-stained prayers and pages torn from pain. The scent of frankincense and old paper lingered in the air, holy and heavy. Across from her sat Pastor Miriam, the kind of woman who had learned wisdom not from books, but from battlefields no one else had seen. Her grey curls framed a face carved by time and truth. "I think," Elise's voice trembled, "I think I'm ready to tell the church everything." Miriam didn't speak. She just tilted her head, listening, like the Spirit might be whispering over Elise's shoulder. "The pills. The night I drove to the bridge and almost didn't turn back. The way I begged God to let me disappear. If I share it all, maybe someone else will feel seen." Elise waited for an answer, half expecting applause. Instead, Miriam leaned forward, her voice soft but laced with holy fire. "Elise," she said, "your pain is precious, but not everyone deserves to handle what heaven is still healing." Elise blinked. "But aren't we supposed to be transparent? Isn't vulnerability what sets people free?" Miriam smiled gently, the kind of smile that holds both love and warning. "Transparency without timing is tragedy," she said. "You're not hiding the wound, you're letting the oil settle." The room fell still. Suddenly, Elise was transported back, not by memory, but by the sting of it. A year ago. Bible study. A room of casual believers. She had opened her heart, spilled her struggle with lust and shame, hoping for comfort. But within days, the same people who nodded in sympathy were whispering in corners. The wound wasn't bandaged, it was weaponized. She'd mistaken exposure for healing, and the crowd had mistaken her story for gossip. Pastor Miriam reached across the table and placed her hand over Elise's journal, like she was sealing something sacred. "Do you remember Samson?" she asked, voice low. The strength wasn't in his hair, Elise, it was in the vow. and the moment he spoke it, the enemy knew how to cut it. Elise felt the words drop into her chest like thunder. It wasn't Delilah that destroyed him, it was disclosure. Her breath caught in her throat. "This time," she whispered, "I thought I was being brave. But maybe I was just bleeding in front of people who didn't know how to bandage me." Miriam stood slowly and walked to the shelf, pulling down an old leather Bible. She flipped to Judges 16 and read aloud. He told her everything. "No razor has ever been used on my head," he said. "If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me." Then she closed the Bible and looked her in the eye. "Elise, some stories aren't ready for the stage. They're still in the secret place, still being wrapped in grace." Outside, a breeze rustled the chapel's stained glass windows. Elise didn't speak. She didn't have to. In her silence, something settled. Not shame, not fear, but wisdom. She didn't need to prove she survived. She needed to protect what was still sacred. Part 2. Don't share the seed while it's still in the soil. Elise sat cross-legged on the floor of her bedroom, surrounded by visions. Sticky notes covered the walls like butterfly wings, each one a whisper from God, each one a seed not yet sown. Some were dreams she'd had, others were verses that stopped her mid-step, and a few were phrases that came like lightning in the middle of worship. Write the curriculum, start the ministry, move when I say move. She stared at them now, a little overwhelmed and very tempted. Just last night, a well-meaning friend at church had said, "Girl, post about it. Let people know what God's doing through you." And Elise almost did. She'd typed out a long caption about the mentorship program, about the vision board, about how she was stepping into her Esther season. But something stopped her. A strange silence. Not guilt, not fear, but a holy pause. She looked across the room and saw her old Bible lying open on her bed, right where she'd left it after prayer, highlighted in gold. "Though the vision is yet for an appointed time, though it lingers, wait for it. And remember Habakkuk 2:3. Her hand dropped from the phone. A memory rose. She was 16 again, sitting at the edge of her cousin Tasha's bed. She'd just had a dream, vivid, wild, pulsing with divine purpose. In the dream, she stood in a massive room, handing out keys to women who'd been locked out of opportunity their whole lives. Tasha had smiled at her, nodded, said all the right things. But 3 weeks later, Elise heard from someone else that Tasha had mocked the dream, called her delusional, said she talked too much about things that never happen. The shame of that betrayal buried the dream for years. Not because it wasn't real, but because she'd shared the seed too early. Back in her room now, Elise stood and walked to the mirror. She looked at herself like a gardener checking soil, not for beauty, but for readiness, because that's what the vision was, a seed. And seeds don't need applause. They need protection. Suddenly the Spirit whispered, not audibly, but in her knowing, what you release too early becomes prey. What you protect becomes power. Elise closed her journal. She didn't delete the caption. She saved it in drafts. She'd release it, not when it felt exciting, but when God said it was time. Because chosen ones don't rush revelation. They wait for the rain, and when it comes, the fruit will be undeniable. Just your approach, but it's my transport. Let it stay there. Some things are not meant for platforms. They are meant for the pillow, the prayer closet, the pages only heaven reads. It was 2:11 a.m., the kind of stillness that made time feel suspended. Elise sat in her room, wrapped in her grandmother's old quilt, a candle burning slow on the nightstand beside her. The journal was open. The air smelled like cinnamon and holy ground. She had prayed earlier that night, not out loud, not with music, but in the aching silence of someone who longs to hear from God more than she longs to be heard by the world. He answered, not in thunder, not in vision, but in strategy, clear instructions, a quiet download, specific names, a move she hadn't seen coming. Her heart pounded with the clarity of it. She grabbed her pen, writing faster than her thoughts could process. By the end of the hour, she sat stunned. This wasn't just insight, it was instruction. Divine, precise, too good not to share. Her fingers hovered over her phone, half ready to text her mentor, maybe even share a clip of what she'd written online. But something stopped her. Not shame, not fear, presence. The Holy Spirit didn't shout. He whispered, and this was not for the crowd. This was for the secret place. Suddenly she remembered the burning bush. Not the scene we all quote, but the silence that came before it. God didn't announce Moses' calling in a temple. He met him in the wilderness, alone, surrounded by dust and sheep and a life that looked like failure. And he spoke there, privately, strategically. Take off your sandals, God said. You are on holy ground. Not public ground, not viral ground. Holy. Elise looked down at her bare feet, curled under the blanket. She whispered back, "Okay, Lord, I won't speak what you've still wrapped in silence." She reached for the candle and blew it out. The room fell into darkness. But her soul was lit. Because when God speaks in secret, He's not withholding from you. He's trusting you. And some of the greatest moves of heaven get in places that never get posted. Part 4. Your spiritual strength isn't for spectacle. Not every roar belongs on a microphone. Some of the loudest battles are fought in silence and won in secret. Sunday morning. The sanctuary buzzed with soft chatter, the hum of instruments tuning, the aroma of peppermint tea and pressed linen. Elise stood behind the pulpit, mic in hand, fingers gently wrapped around its neck like a vessel carrying thunder. Her eyes scanned the pews, familiar faces, faithful faces, and a few new ones that hadn't yet earned her trust. The worship set was already flowing. The spirit was thick, hovering. You could feel it in the air, like invisible oil dripping from the rafters. And just as she was about to begin the next song, she felt that pull, a whisper in her heart. Tell them the breakthrough you had last night, the dream you saw, the fire you felt in your chest at 3 a.m., the one that cracked chains you hadn't realized was still wrapped around your soul. Elise took a deep breath. She could say it. The crowd was hungry. The moment was open. But then another voice came, stronger, still quiet, but unmistakably sovereign. This moment is mine, not yours. Don't trade the anointing for applause. She froze. Her thumb hovered over the mic button. Then, like a lightning bolt from the quiet place, she remembered David. Not David the king. Not David with the harp. David before Goliath, when no one was watching. When he was killing lions and bears in the shadows. No stage. No cheers. No hashtags. Just grit and grace and the quiet strength of someone who knew. What I conquer in secret qualifies me to stand in public. Elise gently lowered the mic. And instead of telling the story, she sang the next song. And the room, the room, erupted. People wept. Altars filled. Demons fled. And no one knew why. But heaven knew, because true strength is never loud. It doesn't demand attention. It shifts atmospheres without explanation. After the service, someone came up to her. "You always share the right words," they said. "Today, you didn't speak much, But I felt everything. Elise smiled. She could have explained. She could have told them the whole truth. But she didn't. Because when you carry sacred strength, you don't need to prove it. You just need to protect it. Part 5. The vision doesn't need validation. You've heard it. It must be the devil. Sorry. So long, hypocrisy. What God whispered in the stillness does not need the world's confirmation. It needs your obedience. The dinner party was casual. String lights, warm bread, soft jazz playing from someone's Bluetooth speaker. Elise sat on the back patio at a long table, surrounded by smiles, laughter, and surface-level questions that felt like landmines. So, what's next for you? Someone asked between bites of salmon and sparkling cider. Any big moves coming up? Another chimed in, "You've been quiet lately. That usually means something's brewing." She smiled politely, slicing her roasted carrots as if that could buy her time. Yes, something was brewing. A move so precise only heaven could have mapped it. A transition soaked in prayer, sealed in silence, and still fragile in the soil of her spirit. But to say it now, to announce it before God had released it, it would be like digging up seeds just to prove they were real. Elise remembered Nehemiah, not the shouting part, the building part, not the celebration, the silence. When he walked round Jerusalem at night, inspecting the broken walls, when no one knew what God had told him, "I had not told anyone what my God had put in my heart to do for Jerusalem." Nehemiah, he didn't ask for applause. He asked for strategy. He didn't look for validation. He looked for timing. Elise put down her fork and lifted her eyes to the woman across the table. "I'm just waiting on God," she said gently, "still listening." That was it. No Instagram boogie face speech, no vision board download, just obedience. Because she wasn't trying to be impressive. She was trying to be trusted. Later that night, she drove home alone. Worship music hummed in the background, but her mind drifted to Mary, the mother of Jesus. After the angel, after the miracle, after the wonder. But Mary treasured all these things and pondered them in her heart. No, she didn't post. She pondered. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a chosen one can do is not announce. Elise pulled into her driveway and sat in the car as the engine cooled. She whispered one sentence into the darkness. "God, I won't prove it, I'll protect it." The wind moved gently through the trees. No lightning, no visions, just peace. Because some visions don't need validation. They just need you to believe God in silence. The silence was the strategy. She used to think silence was weakness, that if she didn't tell her story, it meant she hadn't healed, that if she didn't post the vision, it meant it wasn't real, that if she didn't prove her strength, maybe she had none at all. But now, Elise walks with a different rhythm, slower, surer, sacred, because she's learned. Some wounds are still altars, some visions are still seeds, and some revelations are only safe in the presence of God. She's not hiding. She's guarding. She's not delaying the vision. She's discerning the timing. She's not seeking validation. She's walking in obedience. God didn't call you to broadcast the blueprint. He called you to build it in silence, with a sword in one hand and a prayer in the other, because the enemy can't attack what he doesn't know, and the world can't contaminate what it never heard. You were chosen, not just to speak, but to steward, to protect the promise, to carry it until its time, and not a moment sooner. Not every miracle is meant for the microphone. Some of your most powerful moments will happen where no one claps, but heaven does. The silence isn't your punishment. It's your protection. And when God finally says, now, the doors will open, the walls will fall, and the world will watch in awe. But you'll know, this didn't begin in public, it was birthed in the secret place. If you're carrying something sacred, and you know it's not time to speak, comment below. I'm guarding what God gave me. If this message confirmed what the Spirit already whispered, share it. Someone is one sentence away from saying too much. And if you believe stories like this, protect the chosen, support the journey. This is your time to walk in wisdom, not applause. God bless you. And remember, not every voice is called to be loud, but every chosen one is called to be wise. Keep what's holy, holy.